KDB.
Check it. Baraka za baba, za baba. Yendo number uno, Yesu number uno. Yeah. Number uno, yendo number uno. Si chocha. What is working in my life? A very good evening to you and praise the Lord. Thank you for joining us again for another amazing episode of the Angaza show. My name is Pastor Mwangi, and it's always an honor to always see you and meet you every Saturday on KBC Channel 1. And so this being the Father's Day season, we want to talk about fatherhood. One of the things is that anytime there is Mother's Day, there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of buzz going around. You know, the marketers, what wanna sell my gifts na nini. But Father's Day is inakuanga one of those days tu, ni sherehe moja tu inaendanga ikuwe imeisha. And even looking at the society, we realize fathers are the most uncelebrated icons even in our day. We want to look at where did the waves begin to beat us? Ni wapi tulihata? Because even when we look at the language of the boy child and even where the boy child is today in our nation as Kenya, is like the focus shifted, is about the girl child, and the boy child was forgotten. In a normal home setting, you realize all the siblings celebrate their mother sometimes more than they do celebrate their fathers. I believe there has to be balance, and I believe there is a problem and kuna shida mahali. And so hii show ni ya kurudisha serikali kwa mikono yake, whereby the fathers ought to be respected and their position ought to be there. We are calling it the boys to men, looking at the transition from boys and becoming the men and the social, spiritual, and the position of the men. And I have an amazing guest in the studio, but we are going to begin this conversation immediately after this musical break. So thank you very much if you're joining us right now. This is the Angaza show, and you know, today we are going to have a real conversation about fathers, even as we celebrate Father's Day. I want to say thank you to DJ Tuff for the amazing mixes, and also this amazing obvious environment is courtesy of Trademark Hotel at the Village Market. Asanteni sana for entrusting us with this. And so with me is a man, because it's only men who can talk about men issues and begin to understand and wapi tulihata. So Bwana asifiwe sana.
Amen.
And karibu.
Asante sana.
Yes. Yeah. So we are the abandoned and the forgotten species. Anytime kuna Mother's Day, you can't ignore. Yeah. You know, Facebook inakuanga imejaa, you know, my mom. Now we are getting into a space, it will be a silent weekend. Yeah. And it might pass just like any other weekends. Yeah. And a few fathers will be posted online, and that will just pass by. Let's begin. Ni wapi tulipoteza from the boy child?
Yeah, I know. I mean, we're still looking for just one song that celebrates the fathers. Huh? a lot of the songs are about mama, my mom, wapi tulikosea as a society. I think it's many factors. You could take it from many angles.
Yeah.
Probably from a bigger global conversation, the push towards empowering the woman, in many cases where probably you begin having the faded lines of understanding what is the role of a man, what is the role of a woman. You can look at it from the industrial age perspective, where a lot of women got into work as men went to war, came back and found, hey, I need to fend for my family. And so there was that thinking, I think, from a global perspective, that the woman needs to also be as empowered as a man, because she's now become a breadwinner. You know, economically they need to be empowered and all. And so that push continued. People trace it all the way back from the early 19th century. But I think the more recent history to be the 60s, when you begin looking at the whole feminism movement, and, you know, people argue there's the positive and then, you know, the extreme and what have you. But generally the fact that the woman needs to be more empowered, have equal access. And so a lot of resources were channeled towards that. And you would remember growing up in Kenya in the 80s, there was this, and I guess it's still around, maendeleo ya wanawake. We never got to hear about maendeleo ya wanaume.
Yeah, that's true.
And it was understood as, you know, grassroots women trying to empower them. There was good to it. But I think that that tide kept coming back and collecting a lot more momentum to the point where the women and the girl child seem to be where probably most of the resources are being channeled, and so you have this. You grow up without even thinking that women seem to be a lot more sort of have more empowerment programs, and the man maybe initially thought, we're okay. I mean, we are men. We don't even need help.
Yes.
From anyone.
Yeah.
And so I going to take it from that angle, where economically and resources wise, a lot of even media, there's just portrayal of the fact that women really need empowerment. There's some truth to it in terms of just having equal access, but then that has really gone on, and people have picked it up. And generally cultures, you talk about cultures, I do a lot of work in culture. When you hear something over and over and over and over and over time, you begin actually believing that this is actually the normal state of things.
So here we are, we're already in a crisis. I read a report, I think it was the Millennial Development Goals. And they said part of the goal was girl child empowerment.
Yeah.
The time frame was 2015. So we are 8 years past 2015. We are already feeling the impact of the boy child.
Yeah.
Neglected. In fact, when Asemanga, you bring a Form 2 girl here and a Form 2 boy here, and tell them to express themselves, you can see the difference.
Yeah. I used to see it a lot. So I worked in a program, right, interesting enough, was actually initially called Boys to Men, way back, 97. Then they realized, no, we can't just transition to a transition program. We can't just do Boys to Men, let's include the girl as well. So it became more holistic, and it was called the Rites of Passage program.
Okay.
Where I worked, I've since left 5 years ago. And what I would see, it had a component, that program had a component where when the girl or the boy is being reintroduced to the community to be celebrated, there will be a sort of like a celebration. Dads will come, moms will come, or father figures, mother figures. The girls were very expressive. I mean, they would tell you what they went through. It was like a boot camp, 6 days, like a really serious boot camp. And you look at how they're expressing themselves, and then you look at a boy same age, you easily gravitate towards the girl in terms of just they seem to know and are very clear in terms of what you're doing. So part of it is generally boys develop a little bit slower. There's that factor. But I think there's a lot of just empowerment that I think that has come. We don't realize it over all those many decades coming to where we are, where girls come out a lot more confident, even in the workplace. They tend to be the ones who answer questions better in the interviews. The men are still sort of groping in the dark. It's been changing. There's been good efforts, I must say. It's not all gloom. And I think the tide can be changed and can be sort of flipped around. But yeah, so that's where we find ourselves in, where the man, because of the role traditionally understood to be very fend for your family, work has also separated dad from children, where previously, say 100 plus years ago, there's a lot of apprenticeship that you would see dad passing on skills of his trade, whatever that was, whether it was fishing, farming, to their children. Now, in the current workspace, they go fend for the family, but then when they come back, they find that they're very disconnected with their children. Moms are just very naturally well designed to nurture. Even the chemicals that run in their bodies, everything is just about, they very easily connect. So they almost like have an advantage in terms of just connecting and relating to the children, whether it's a boy or a girl. But when it comes to now the fathers, they have to work a little bit harder, breaking the mold of how the workplace has boxed them, and coming back to connect intentionally to children.
We can't run away from the reality that we have many single mothers raising men. What is this that if you find yourself as a single mother and you are raising a boy. Remember, this is not a child only. This is a man in the formation. What are some of the things that they need to be cautious about as they are raising this boy?
Yeah, so there's something that we used to do in that program I mentioned there, the Rites of Passage program. So they would come and would say, oh, you brought your son, you're a single mom. Who is their sort of male mentor, father figure? Grandfather, uncle? And it would actually throw off quite a few single mothers and say, but I've raised my son, I'll be there for him, I'll do everything. I'm like, that's true, but you cannot midwife, so to say, masculinity and confer masculinity to this young man.
Wow.
We need a man, a grandfather, uncle, pastor, anyone who is sort of older and they have a relationship, a good relationship, and is a good influence to influence this. So we found that we had to coach single moms to actually identify very carefully who is this male figure who would influence their son. And you find that sometimes it's maybe the father is completely absent, or the father could be present, is around, but is not available.
Yeah.
And so again, which is a different conversation. But we single mothers need to know that the boy needs a male figure to triangulate with and sort of get their bearing around in life. And it's a process you do carefully in terms of selecting who is it then, which means if you have a very young one, you have a good window of time. That program used to be at around 13, 14.
Okay.
Is when we would transition them. So, but from that point on, we personally felt called to now begin talking to parents of very young children to begin saying, you know what, if you actually build some relationships around this kijana, then you stand a bigger chance of them having a longer exposure to a male figure who is a good influence. So the onus is on the single mom to actually sort of very intentionally build the relationship, either with her brother, if he's around, or close cousin, or grandfather, or pastor, or youth pastor, or whatever. Somebody who, even a coach, a sports coach, if they're positive influence, and actually have this young man sort of begin triangulating with this male figure and close that gap. So that has to be said to the single moms. Much as they're very well-intentioned, well-meaning, and they're doing a fantastic job, it's just that there's a certain place where only a man can sort of confer a certain identity in a young man in a way that they feel secure and confident to handle life situations. Yeah.
I like what you said. You can't. A woman can raise, she can provide, but she cannot midwife masculinity. She may not be able to give that man identity.
Yeah.
It will take another man.
It takes another man.
Do you think men learn through role modeling?
Oh yes, 100%. You know, it's very interesting. I'll mention two stories. One, Nelson Mandela, in his book, Long Walk to Freedom, this is a part that he says, so he lost his father when, I think he was either 9 or 12, I might be confusing the ages. And the mom, of course, stayed alone. So he writes and says, even though my mom was the center of my universe, so he recognizes, oh, my mom, I mean, all of us, if you have moms, you know, they're everything to us. Even though my mom was the center of the universe, I defined myself with my father. So it's that thing of dads define purpose, confer identity, a sense of direction, a sense of directedness in life, in a way that mothers, much as they are the center of our universe, are not able to completely deliver. So that's one. Two, I think God is very intentional in being available as a father to those who are, say, fatherless or don't have fathers. A little story around Timothy and Paul. It seems to me God raised Paul to really give direction to Timothy. And he acknowledges and says, the faith that was in your grandmother Lois and in your mother, I forget the name, I see it in you. Meaning, the women have done a fantastic job introducing the faith, but you see it from outside looking in. Possibly Paul became this male figure. And I mean, Timothy had a dad. He was Greek.
Yeah.
But then now spiritually and just modeling and being mentored, there's a big place for fathers and men to be role models to younger men, because we're very visual as men. So you begin looking around to see who do I want to sort of triangulate with, and you tend to follow the one you think is actually heading the right direction. And so role modeling, 100%, men need to be there to model the good qualities of how to be a man.
Because you'll always hear I've had many people, those that have had the chance to grow close to their fathers.
Yeah.
You'll hear them quote their fathers more. My father used to say, my father used to do, what my father did.
Yeah.
And you realize it's like men are very poor with book knowledge or literature, but they are very good with telling them this is what we think. And I think that's why possibly in the traditional setting, it was easy for men to carry the boys and teach them on the trade as they do it.
Absolutely. I'll tell you a funny story.
Yeah.
I have accumulated a set of tools that are an exact replica of my brother's, and we didn't talk. So you find my brother's toolkit, he has a pliers, he has a pipe wrench, he has a hammer, he has a slasher. So he's doing it separately, I'm doing it separately. And it's because we had a privilege. I'm one of those people who, for a long time, I was not able to say this because I found that around me there's a lot of brokenness. But I actually have a positive story. Fathered very well, my dad was very present, you know, and in a way that we've triangulated with him. I saw my grandfather. I was privileged also to see his maternal grandfather, who's my great-grandfather.
Wow.
And so I have to say almost like maybe third, fourth generation of seeing fathers making good decisions. And when I traced them, the game changer was when they accepted Christ and when they became people of deep faith and following Jesus. And so then that heritage has come to me. So I say that to say that it is possible at any point in the lineage to actually start modeling the right thing to your children. And so I look at, I'm a beneficiary of triangulating with my father.
Okay.
And seeing him handle his relationship with my mom and us. And so a lot of what I do is almost like I'm already on 50% autopilot of just what my dad did. And then now, you know, clearing up the different, we all come with some level of viruses. We need to be cleaned up all the time as I improve what I pass on to my children now.
Maybe at what stage do you begin to shape the identity of a man in a boy?
As early as when that child is probably in their mother's womb, if you're present. Just hearing your voice, because children now, we know from psychology, they're able to actually pick even your voice when they're in the womb. You might not be able to do the whole nurturing thing. You can try, you know, patia mtoto formula or whatever, milk, you change diaper and all that. That helps you to be present and to develop. You can notice the changes of the child. But now when the child turns around 7 to around 9, they really need the father's voice.
Okay.
Because the mom is sort of tapering off in the nurturing. By the time, like, my children are, 2 of them above 9. And I noticed by the time they hit 9, 10, the level of reasoning, they are now engaging the mom. And the mom wants to do the commanding style of, I told you, do this, do this, do this. Dad really needs to check in to begin now coaching, reasoning with them, and conferring that identity. So I'd say from around 7, 8, 9 going upwards, they really need the dad to kick in. But you do better if you've invested early, in the earlier window of time.
Okay.
So that this is now a dividend you're just reaping of a good relationship.
So you're not just showing up.
You're not just showing up like, oh, I'm just waiting, 9, now let me wake up. Yeah, so you're there, you're hanging out with them, you're showing them around, and they have a lot of security, both boys and girls. And then by the time they're 9, 10, 13, you have developed this open conversation relationship. Now, because they're really listening. They might not look like teenagers are not listening. They might look like they're even ignoring you, but you keep talking. You just keep directing. They are actually soaking it in, and they need it.
So that means if I show up at 16, it's too late.
Oh, 16, man.
Or 14.
You need God's miracle and God's grace, and grace is sufficient.
At that time, their mindset is already formed and
formed.
everything.
It's formed because from around 9, 10, 11, 12, they are now beginning to shift their... It's interesting how God designed it. 0 to say about 12, they're very focused on the parent as the authority who is present and available, even in terms of source of information and all that. So again, that's why I'm saying that window of investment, you need to use it. By the time they're going up 13, moving forward, they are now triangulating with peers, and then now we have tech devices, they're interacting with the world out
now.
there.
Yes.
You're still there.
Yes.
On a weighted index, you still are a voice, but now the world is becoming bigger.
Wow.
So now you're losing it because you're fighting a season. It's like you missed the season. You're fighting at a season where your voice is not the only voice.
Wow.
There are many other voices at play, and yours
together.
has to be maybe louder. You have to really work hard.
Wow.
It's possible,
Yes.
but you have to work
It takes
a
a
lot
miracle.
harder. Yeah.
Anyway, we're having a conversation about boys to men, because in every boy there is a man, in every man there is a boy. And sometimes the quality of the man that you become is dependent by the quality of the boy that was raised. And this is an amazing conversation, just looking into it. I know Father's Day is here, and what a good time for us to have this conversation. So we'll be taking a small musical break, and I want to say thank you to the Trademark Hotel for giving this fertility. And we'll be right back immediately after the break.
I feel safe like Mr. Ping.
So welcome back, and thank you very much. If you're joining us right now, this is the Angaza show that comes to you every Saturday at this particular hour. My name is Pastor Tim Mwangi, and thank you to DJ Taff for the amazing mixes, and also Trade In Hotel in Village Market for this amazing ambience. And we are here. It's Father's Day, the most forgotten species, and we took the first segment just to understand the transition of how to raise the boy into becoming the man that he's supposed to be. And I like what my guest has said. Between the age of 7 to 12 is a prime time for your voice to be heard, direction. That at that time, by the time children are 0 or 1 to 12 years, they look at their parents as an authority. And the moment they hit 13, the world is open to them. Their peers are open to them. And sometimes you may be talking, but there are other people talking. And they say at that time they enter into what we call the plurality of truths. You are truth and there are other truths, and sometimes experiment comes in, and sometimes we lose them and we feel like we have no control any longer. They're developing their own mindset and all that. So now let's come to where we are, because now someone said it's one thing to be born a man, is another thing to become a man. You can be a man by birth, but again, the intentions that make you to be a man. What are some of the things, let's begin, what are some of the definitions that you feel like needs to be revised?
I love the word you have used. You talked of what you become.
Yes.
So like everything that we try and do at Badili Experience is about, we actually believe that you become what you believe.
Okay.
So when you look at your belief system and what's going on internally, and I see how you're behaving and who you're becoming, I can actually tell this is really who you believe. This is what you believe. So that window of about 9, preteen, went ahead to design something that can help parents figure out, said, what air do they breathe? AIR.
Okay.
And so the first A, that A is being the affirming authority. That's the man, the dad. And there's a lot to be said around that, being available, being able to do that. It's a lot of intentionality.
Yeah.
But then the second thing is identity,
Yes.
the I. So the dad being the one who defines the identity, and there's a lot to be said about identity and the level of confidence that a child shows up in the world with because of the identity because I know who I am, I know where I belong, I know who I am becoming because of what I believe.
Yeah.
So that's identity. And then the third is responsibility.
Okay.
There's a lot that we talk about when it comes to responsibility, whether it's managing yourself within time, your work ethic, T's, like 12 T's that we sort of talk about, technology, things, handling, treasure, tools. It's a whole conversation around responsibility. So I'd say if you're able to breathe in your son and daughter, because I've found, because we also do a lot of work with marriages, and so by the time somebody is arriving here as a spouse to be or a spouse, they're a product of all these years of people doing all these things and the influences they've had. And we find that the definers are normally very early. So by the time you're raising your daughter or your son, you're actually raising somebody to be a husband eventually, God allowing, or a wife. And so when you look at what are those three things for me, it's that affirming authority, identity, and responsibility. For me, that's how we've sort of defined what a man needs to do to raise a son.
The question is the air.
Yes.
Which air they breathe.
Yes, which air they breathing.
Yes.
Yes.
Affirmation, identity, and responsibility.
Responsibility.
When you look at the framework today in Kenya,
Yeah.
and where the men are, what are some of the things you feel like, hey boss, we need to pull our socks here? If nothing happens, we might mess a generation that is coming and even mess ourselves.
So
Generally, tuko kwa
yeah.
generation ya mubaba, wacha tuko real juu tuko Kenya.
Yeah.
Tuko kwa generation ya sponsor. Tuko kwa generation gani ingine? Tuko kwa generation ya, multiple partners. Looks like masculinity is defined by how many women you have. They said 40 is the new 30, the new 20. Inaka ukifika 40 lazima utafute kaklande. What are some of the disciplines we need to have as men?
Sometimes I feel too ni kutojua the power we wield as men, even at home. Just your presence in itself, hapo nyumbani, inageana such stability. And then the extra thing that we need to do is to be available. So I distinguish between presence and availability.
Okay.
I've done it where nimefika home, so I'm present.
Okay.
Lakini natoa phone. So as men, we have to deal with, global warming, lazima to sort, climate change, the pandemic, vitu kubwa huko nje. So niko kwa phone. So my daughter would come, oh dad, look, I drew this. She's just, ataka tu story. Hii ni kitu tu ametumia ndio tupige story. Na mwangalia tu, yeah, that's really good. Good job. Yeah. Mimi nimerudi kusort. So I'm present, but I'm not available.
Wow.
To build this relationship. So there's those who are completely not present, and then there's those who are present, but they're not using their power to influence around. So that's what I would say at the home front. And all those things, when you're seeing men or make a damn ball, this is like a 24-year-old, I make a 14-year-old, 17-year-old ball. All these things stem from, Waswahili wanasema ukiona vyaelea ujue vimeundwa. Which means things don't just start at when you're 24 or when you're 31. Hii kitu ilipikwa polepole, kuna ma stages zilimisiwa in terms of directing this guy. So you're now dealing with an end product. So now we are busy trying to deal with the symptoms. And that's why for me, when I really, really thought about this, it went back to go back to the upstream.
Yes.
Mzazi yako na mtoi mdogo ama mtoi yako kwa mother's womb, that that parent, whether single mom or just the family unit, dad and mom, if they can get this wisdom earlier. Yes, we have a mess to deal with.
Yes.
Big mess.
Yeah.
But what if we begin cleaning this stream, upstream
From the source.
from the source? It will take a couple of years, but so we have to take a longer term vision as we deal with the immediate mess, which is people showing up unfathered, not well mentored, they're making all kinds of mistakes. Those are strategy tu nazo tukienda. But I think we should go back to the building from the source and be patient.
Okay.
It will take a long time. Itakuwa overnight. Yeah.
Wacha tuange kuhusu balance. Juu Dhalwad shughuli ni 430. Hata tujongelea mkate, hatujongelea unga na hizo vitu zingine.
Yeah.
Mwanaume ni kujituma.
Yes.
And sometimes I look at men, and because we are all men here, you know, sometimes we look at our lives, there is a whole people depending on you, and you must stand and provide.
Yeah.
As you said, you have to be available, you have to get out and come. And sometimes you look at this person, everyone looks up to him, but he has no one to look up to. How does a man balance? Because kuna mtu unaweza muitisha 100 bob ya tokens I wrapped, because there is so much.
That's true.
They, you know, and especially in a city setup.
That's true.
Wazazi ocha wanakutegemea. Ndio hao watoi hapa wanakutegemea. Sometimes you even have relatives, cousins that you are supporting. Economy is hard, life is hard, and everyone is looking up to you. Who do men look up to, and how do they bring that balance that I can still go out, fight, hunt, and I can still be available to my children? How do you strike that balance?
And there are no easy answers.
Yes.
It's a complex, but I'll just tell you from my own maybe experience. First, to acknowledge, we are not saying that now you've quit work, we are available. No, God has actually given us work. Back, I take the example of God himself in the Garden of Eden. I've always wondered why he showed up in the cool of the evening. I assume because nilikupatia job. That's how umemaliza kupiga stories sasa. Nimekupa job. So I normally take it as umekuja jioni. Hey Adam, where are you?
Past 5.
Past 5. Adam, where are you? Who told you you're naked? Unapiga story. So there's that intentionality of knowing day yako haijaisha na job. Ukikuja home, kuja urelax, time yako ya kurelate. Uliza maswali, homework, what, kumekuaje, how was the day and all that. But I think your question goes beyond that to say, the world is demanding a lot from me.
Yes.
I'll answer it this way. One, God has actually built you by design to be able to carry. Kama kusema tu, but they, ladies, how do you even manage to carry a baby 9 months? And with all the hormones, and then you have to work, and you have to take care of that little one, the older brother, the older sister. It's because God has given them the grace to be able to handle that functional design. So I'd say there's a design part that God has already given us the ability to do that.
So we are wired.
We are wired for that. We are wired for war, for challenge. I mean, that's why even when you look at wars, it was men who would be called to war. Yes, we have stories of women who joined in the war, but men are the ones who would be called, let's go to war. But there would always be that older man you're learning from, that older warrior who has medals and all that, and you're sharing stories. So maybe the loss that has happened in the recent past is not having people who you can sort of look up to. So one I would say is you can be that guy who then now is sort of breaking the headwinds for the sake of the other men. The other, number two is don't go alone. Go together as a pack. You have a pack of brothers that you're able to share and say, hey, this is really difficult, this is really hard for me. And you're able to build a trusting relationship where you can be vulnerable and share what is happening. And men tend to sort of share while in activity, mkifanya vitu ndio unapiga story. Tunakutanga wasio wakienda kutei. Watakelea ni hapo ikifika mahali sasa at least now sasa naweza jiachilia. The guy begins now talking about his heart issues.
Wasemango walevu wananyani.
But we can actually have those conversations when we are sober.
Yeah.
And just talk about the challenges. But just to remember that the one who designed us has actually given us the ability to do so. But we should change ourselves when we do not connect with him.
Ni Father's Day, najua mazee kama kuna watu wako ignored ni sisi.
Yeah.
Ni gift gani hiyo tunaweza pewa tusikie, advice to the ladies around, anyone who wants to gift their father in this season.
Yeah.
One thing that, and personally not just for the Father's Day, one thing that people can begin to do to men, their fathers and all that, just to sustain the relationship. And something that excites men. The worst thing, I might decide to give you a gift that does not even excite you.
That's true.
And I remember one day, it was during Christmas, and my father bought everyone a gift except himself.
Yeah.
And my mother, I will never forget, my mother bought my father a gift and said, you know what, you've bought for us all. But I realized you didn't buy yourself a gift, and I could see the joy. One day I bought my father a suit. Ilikuwa tu suit ya isili. But I can tell you, hiyo suit kwa wardrobe iko na jina, inaitangwa ile suit ya Tony. He has many suits. But that one suit, it could not even be the best, but it is named because I think looking at that point of finally someone thought about me.
You're right.
And actually even gave me a gift. I think it's so amazing. What are some of these things that, as children, because there are people, everyone is a product of a father.
Yeah.
What are some of these things we can begin to cultivate just in honor of our fathers, even in this Father's Day?
I think you know your dad well, and some of us probably are still rebuilding a relationship that was broken. But if you could sense what they love, it could be just a gift of airtime, umtumie tu kakredo, ama shati, ama simu, maybe simu yake imechapa, unaweza mu-upgradeia, just something that is functional. But I actually find that dads really appreciate.
Yes.
But my own dad, there's a time, tukiwa kitabu, tukiwa kole, my bro is a lot more sentimental than I am. That's the bro I talked about. He said, but it was Buddha just a card, kaningine kubwa. Okay, sawa, tumandikie. So my mom tells us he really treasured it. This was like almost 20 years ago. Wow. He still has that card.
Wow.
Ile tu, wow, hasa wale nifikiria. And so we've now gotten into just buy a gift, appreciate, ikifika, just sometimes ataka ni birthday, mwambie tu, yani, just send it. And some of our fathers are not expressive in terms of at yo, I love you. So I'm not telling you to tell your dad I love you. You inaweza mchanganya sana. Wewe sema tu, mtumie kitu, just something to recognize.
There are only two institutions that can bless you. A priest and a father. Hata wakati watu wanaingia dowry negotiation, they always say the child belongs to the father and all that. And we are seeing a generation wengine wana grow na beef, wengine wana feel hapana, I'll never forgive this guy. And you've said something very important. We all products of grace. There are places where men fell. Sometimes even people look back and feel, I would have done better. I would have been a good father. Now let's reverse the role, whereby the father has never apologized, but there's a young man watching, or someone is watching today. And how do you begin to approach a father you feel offended you? How do you begin to amend that relationship?
So first I want to acknowledge that it's difficult because I have dealt with people who are processing that. So yes, it is difficult. But if for nothing else, do it for yourself. Because nile wanasemanga, sometimes not forgiving the other person is like taking poison yourself and hoping the other person will die. So you will be doing two things. You'll be helping yourself by just beginning to just brave that conversation, but also you'll have done something biblically where you're honoring your father with his mistakes.
Yes.
Yeah, and one thing that I think that I feel like has helped some of the people I have talked to is understanding that your dad was already handed a bad deal earlier. So mali amefika, we normally say it's easy to empathize with somebody who is maybe physically handicapped. Unaona hana mguu, so hizi stairs wacha nimsaidie tupande pamoja. But when you're emotionally handicapped, it's not visible.
Yeah.
So most likely, when you trace back, your dad was already handed a bad one. He's already emotionally handicapped. So empathize that Maze, he did what he could. And maybe he did wrong things. But mali alikuwa amefika na ile revelation and knowledge, so mpatie hiyo grace.
The grace.
Alafu uende umwambie tu, yeah, I'm here, these vitu zote zili happen, but I forgive you. And that in itself, I know of a good friend of mine who did that, looked for his dad who had never been there the whole time. Aliwaacha wakiwa wadogo. But when he was getting married, he looked for him.
Wow.
And then he went, told him, the dad began crying. Akalia hapo hata anashindwa sasa, now what do I do? Because he can see, but the guy can't help himself. And from then on, they formed a relationship until the point he died. But he was really appreciative of the fact that his son came. Okay. And so one last thing that somebody told me not too long ago is, it's the younger who should approach the older. Okay. Even though sometimes we feel like, you're the one who should come and apologize to me. But generally, even for mentors, if you're being mentored, you're the one who looks for that mentor, work na schedule yake, ujue yako wapi. So for your dad, I think it will really help if you can look for him and just go and say those words of, I've forgiven you, even though I know it was, even though it's difficult. I acknowledge it's difficult, but God is able to help you. So I've seen people do it.
Now we can end with your name and what you do.
Yeah, okay, my name is Steve Kiteto. I'm a team leader at Badili Experience. Badili Experience deals with culture, workplace culture, and family culture, and also the transitions of adults. Just looking at what we believe is what we become. And so, yeah, that's what we do.
Well, thank you very much. We bless the Lord for you. And thank you for everyone that was watching. Of course, it's a conversation. My desire for this Father's Day is anyone that maybe you have a broken relationship with your father, my desire that this Father's Day will be a season of reconciliation and a season of love. And my other desire is that just reach out. I'm a pastor. Sometimes you guys call us dad, you give us gifts. This Father's Day, please reach out to your father. Mtumie kakitu, wache mpesa igurume. Pia ezisikia vibaya. And just tell him happy Father's Day and honor that man. Remember, there are two institutions that can bless you, a priest and a father. And the blessings of a father can never be given by a priest. Neither the blessing of a priest can ever be given by a father. And this is very key for your development. Otherwise, Pastor Tim Mwangi, this is the Angaza Show. And to all the fathers outside there fighting, laboring to see that things are moving in your family, happy Father's Day. May God bless you. So thank you very much for joining us for the Crossroad segment. When you read the Bible, when Jacob was about to bless his sons, he said a very powerful statement in the book of Genesis 49. He said, your father Jacob is calling you, gather that you may hear Israel, your father. That is to tell me, in every father, there is a duality of existence. There was Jacob the man had weaknesses. The man was a trickster. But when he came to the blessing of his children, he said, listen to your father Israel. And the blessings that came upon from Jacob were the blessings that dictated the destiny of the 12 sons of Jacob. When we look at our fathers, one thing that you don't know, fathers are not just men, but these are carriers of ordinations and carriers of destiny. One word from your father can either shape your life and destroy your life. We know people that have suffered curses, and there are peoples whose lives are where they are because a man spoke. In the book of Genesis, we see Abraham blessing Jacob on behalf of Esau. When Esau came, he said, I have no blessing to release unto you. In this Father's Day, we want to honor all the fathers because of who you are, but above all because of your ordination as sources who can speak blessing upon us. And it is my prayer that you is listening and watching, that you are going to make sure that you don't miss this fatherly blessing. From our desk to all the fathers, we want to say a happy Father's Day. And I want to say thank you very much to the KBC and, everybody that is a part of this production, the camera work team, and everybody. I want to say thank you to Trademark Hotel for giving us this avenue where we are able to bring you these amazing photos from. My name is Pastor Tim Mwangi. See you next Saturday. And once again, happy Father's Day.